Generally calm people have read it. What made you lose your mind that time? Story 1. My son was maybe 8 months old and had been diagnosed as profoundly deaf. Deaf kids will often inhale to make vibrations and noise that they can somewhat hear for stimulation. We were on pins and needles as I had just lost my job, and our insurance into cochlear implant surgery was going to cost us $170,000. We'd have to sell the house and one of the cars. We needed a break, and our in-laws took us to the food court at a local mall. Our boy started to inhale and gasp. "He needs a beating," a fat 20-something said not so quietly to our friends at the table next to us. I rarely curse in public, and am generally non-confrontational, but a stream of insulting profanity issued from my mouth for a good 10 minutes that would have put a sailor to shame. I found it couldn't stop, and it got on the verge of Bukowskian poetry. I insulted her mother, her weight, and her pinched-faced friends. I launched into the smell of her how fat she was, how she'd only be able to reproduce with a blind drunk moron with a death wish, that she was uglier than the devil's on fire, and it only progressed from there. Affley Ermey's Marine drill sergeant from Full Metal Jacket would have told me to tone it down a bit. I told her he was deaf and that we couldn't stop it. This was a goddamn food court in a pissant southern town filled with ignorant mutant troglodytes that embarrassed normal troglodytes. The food court was silent and all the eyes were upon us. And then it progressed from there. She got up and left crying. I can honestly say the whole rant was involuntary. I had never done anything like this before and have not done it since. I feel bad for her to this day. I love this one. Just from the details given, don't feel bad. You had every right to be pissed the hell off, and she had no right to suggest your kid get spanked just because he frequently inhales. Story 2. I worked at a diner with an open kitchen. You can see us and we can see you. I'm the only cook during the lunch rush when I hear a lady shout, "Hey!" I look over and a lady sitting in a booth points at me and then does a very condescending "come here" motion with her finger. I thought something was wrong with her food, so I decided I can run out of the kitchen, leaving 4 orders on the grill, and see what I need to fix. She has no food on her table. She holds her blue soda cup out to me and asks, "What is this?" Excuse me? Why is my root beer in a soda cup and not in a mug? I don't know, I'm just the cook. Oh, great. Another idiot in this place who doesn't know anything. She then proceeds to chew me out, because I, the cook, do not know where the server gave her root beer in a cup. We have special root beer mugs, but the servers couldn't find them. Someone misplaced them. I apologize and head back into the kitchen while she's loudly talking crap about me to the next booth, to find that all of my orders are ruined, and more had been coming in. It's already stressful working in a kitchen, and that was the last straw. I went in back, started screaming and kicking the walk-in cooler. When I went back out, everyone was quiet and avoided eye contact, even the lady with issues. Still looked pretty mad though. I rushed through the orders and thank God she left without saying anything. I didn't get in trouble though since my manager was serving and had to deal with her as well. He understood. Story 3. My friend, who's usually a chill person, had some girl made fun of her brother who was and she ended up beating her up and getting kicked out of school for it. Totally deserved. What kind of sicko does that? Story 4. I was in charge of a rollover trainer once at a military training site. Think of a Humvee and an axle that spins, like a rollover accident. Part of the safety brief before anyone goes in is to empty their pockets of all items. Take any items and belts off. You have rubber items inside to stimulate stuff flying. We do this for safety's sake. Part of the training is we stop the trainer on its side or roof, so the participants can get exposure to assisting the other passengers and exit the vehicle safely and quickly. It's been a long, boring day. It's got me, like all good army training, hungover and irritated. All officers and they aren't listening for crap. We stop the exercise on the roof for a group, and they all exit except one who can't undo the seatbelt. I opened the door and reached in and placed my hand on a dual-edged 4-inch boot knife. I absolutely lost my head. I saw red. My ears burned and I distinctly remember seeing one of the other instructors mouth, "Oh crap." I chewed out every officer there, all of whom outranked me, many of whom outranked my commander. Didn't matter, as my position was safety officer. I went on a tirade. I turned around after it was done, and my best friend was recording it on his phone. That prick showed that clip the rest of the week and for years after him. I miss that sucker every day. Story 5. I used to be a waitress and never caused any drama. I was there to make money for my wedding. I showed up on time, didn't take smoke breaks, never on my phone, and rolled with the punches. The 2 best compliments of my life came from my manager. One was him thanking me for not making him know my fiance's name. I never had problems to deal with at work like the other girls and I didn't chit-chat. And when all hell was breaking loose, he called me his calm little Hindu calf, which still makes me laugh. Anyway, this jerk of a cook wouldn't stop calling me pet names and trying to touch me. Every time I said loudly and clearly, "Don't touch me," and "My name isn't Sweetheart, it's Hopeful Kitty," everyone knew how I felt and tried to tell me, "That's just how he is, let it go." I told him that the way I am is that I don't want him to touch me. When the manager talked to him, he'd stop for a few weeks, then start again. After months of this, I told the manager if it didn't stop, I was going to file a harassment complaint. The manager talked to the owner and asked if he'd rather have the cook or me, because I was on the verge of quitting. They agreed they'd rather have me 100 times over this jerk. Dude was gone by the next day, and I got an escort to my car every night. Turns out if you're drama-free and calm, people really listen when you have a problem. The way I am is that I don't want him to touch me. That is an A-plus line right there. That's just how he is just code for, this doesn't personally bother me enough to attempt to fix it, and I'm pretty sure you'll just learn to suck it up if I ignore you. Story 6. It always felt like my parents never wanted me. I was a surprise honeymoon baby born 9 months and a day after their wedding. I was regularly screamed at for anything I did until I just started hiding. I was called the practice child my whole life. My younger siblings got way more love and attention, etc. In my teens, they started taking in strays. If any neighborhood kids didn't want to go home, they could just be at our house all the time. Effectively, my mother would take my friends away from me to be her friends instead, one of which was a kid who picked on me constantly from the time I was 11. I guess they had that in common. That guy was kicked out of his dad's house and his mom's house when he was 20, so my parents took him in permanently. That me. But I always wanted their approval, so I was always calm and agreeable, always desperately trying to figure out how to get them to love me, so I went along with it. Years later, I'm married and have a son. This guy still lives with my parents. They continue to coddle and make excuses for him while criticizing me for whatever they feel like. One day, we're all at my parents' house and my son is being a goofy 2-year-old, which annoys the man-child living there, so he gets furious, picks my son up by his ankle, and spanks him. My parents claim to not have seen it. We went home. I couldn't sleep that night because I was so upset. The next morning, I made sure the guy and my mom would be at home, and why wouldn't he be there? And I went to confront them with my wife. I had dumped everything I'd been putting up with for about an hour, including asking how my mom could allow this jerk to hit my son. She maintained that it didn't happen, so I went through the roof. I ended up crying because of all the pent-up emotion, so my fantastic wife took over. She said we wouldn't be coming back if the guy still lived there. So he yelled that he would move out, and he stormed off after saying he didn't have to listen to this. My parents convinced him not to move out shortly after we left. My mother expressed how disappointed she was that I didn't come to have a conversation. It only came to dump on them. That was her big takeaway from everything I said, that I wasn't being fair to them. We went to counseling with him later, for months. It validated everything I had felt, but they never stopped lying and being defensive. One counselor said we should be on Dr. Phil. The other counselor said my mom is incapable of empathy. Both counselors called my parents delusional. But of course, my parents didn't take any of that seriously. At one point, my dad asked me, "Who does he think to judge us like that?" As if he forgot that's their job. Haven't spoken with them in almost a year, and my life is so much better. Story 7. My wife was due to give birth on a date I had a trial. I'm an attorney. The state attorney's office refused to consent to a continuance, insisting they were going to be ready for a trial that day. The day comes, I go to the courthouse and find that the SAO doesn't have one of their witnesses and is asking for a continuance. Needless to say, I lost my crap arguing against them receiving such a continuance when they had failed to subpoena a witness or make any effort to contact said witness by their own admission. The judge, of course, allowed them to have a continuance. I swore I'd never practice in that court again. It's known around here for being especially friendly to the prosecution to the point of absurdity. And where the SAO is known to engage in constitutionally questionable evidentiary practices, my wife gave birth the next day and I've never been back to the jurisdiction. The state ultimately dropped charges against my client because they didn't have a critical witness. Just a quick message, if you like our stories and would like to see more of our content, please press the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell to see more of our future uploads. Thank you, and now back to the stories. Story 8. My grandfather passed away, so I told my boss that I had to take a couple of days off to be with my family. He had the nerve to tell me my work was more important than family and threatened to fire me. I went off on him in the middle of the office for a solid 5 minutes before quitting and rushing home. Story 9. Another unit lied to me about the condition a patient was in. I went into the supply room and screamed to vent at another nurse. Poor girl remains the only person at work to ever see me lose my shit. Without giving too much away, one of the units I work at only takes patients that are able to care for themselves. The patient was described to be pleasant, cooperating, a little confused, what he was admitted for, but not inappropriate in any way. He can allegedly walk and take care of himself. I forgot the rest, but I remember it was slightly iffy, and we decided to take the patient because it sounded like they'd be okay. The patient gets to us and is a screaming, flailing mess, tries to kick me in the face from the stretcher that he cannot stand up from. At the same time, we get another transfer from that same floor, and the other patient who is fully oriented tells us my patient has been acting this way all night on the other unit. Then the nurse from the other unit goes into the chart and adds in a note, after the patient is off her unit, that she didn't think the patient was adequate for transfer to my unit. I screamed and reported the whole thing, and then apologized to the other nurse working with me because I never fly off the handle like that. Story 10. I lost my crap when my patient got a pre-authorization for surgery for a large grapefruit-sized pelvic mass denied by BCBS, and when I did a peer-to-peer, the doctor working for the insurance company said I needed to have a psychiatrist rule out mental causes over pain first. I had to walk away for 30 minutes before seeing another patient because had anyone given me any more lip, I might have gotten violent. Story 11. I lost my head when I was late for work because my colleague asked me to cover their shift and gave me the wrong time, and it was my fault from the company's perspective. Story 12. My brother and I played travel sports for a few seasons as kids. One trip I was at the pool with some of his teammates messing around in the water, and the coach's kid was being a jerk as usual. My brother was one of the smaller kids on his team, so the coach's son would annoy him a lot. Most of the kids on my brother's team disliked him, but didn't speak up so they wouldn't be next. He thought it would be funny to pick up my brother's drink right in front of him and spit into it. My dad taught me from a young age to not let anyone mess with my brother or sister, so I got seriously pissed. I took a good running start and shoulder-checked him into the pool. Since he had just gone there, he hadn't taken his clothes off yet, and cried because his phone and iPod got ruined. He literally ran out yelling, "I'm telling my dad!" Well, that backfired, because everyone stuck up for my brother, and the coach was not happy to find out what a jerk his son was being, so he was the only one to get in any trouble. Good on your coach for not sticking up for his mean son. Story 13. My friend is bad with math. I was explaining a thing once. It took 10 minutes. He tells me he doesn't get it, so I sit there and explain this thing more deeply. It took 30 minutes. He's like, takes in-ear headphones out of ear. He was covering it with his hand. "Oh, sorry, I wasn't listening to you. Found this amazing radio recently." I lost my crap. Story 14. I was always a really quiet kid, even as a toddler apparently. So one of the first times I remember losing my crap was when I got really tired of this third grader picking on me on the bus. I was in kindergarten and this kid kept popping his head over my seat and poking me. I timed it out, and the next time he did, I punched him straight in the nose, which he immediately started crying. I didn't know it at the time, but apparently the kid's parents tried to get some disciplinary action against me. That was until they found out I wasn't the same age or older. They just didn't want to make a big stink out of the kid getting slapped by a kindergartner. Story 15. It was Halloween, and I was sitting out the front of my house watching my sister take my niece, who was around 4, trick-or-treating. The people who lived above us, we lived in a maisonette, decided to shoot a firework at them. This is the only time I've lost it. Got them inside the house, made sure they were all right. Sister had only a few non-serious burns on her arm and managed to shield my niece from the explosion. At that point, I was just so angry. Went up to their door and started banging on it, demanding they come out. They didn't answer, so I started trying to kick the door in. My mom and brother dragged me away and back inside to calm me down. Half an hour later, the police arrived because the neighbors had called them about me. Luckily, after we explained what had actually happened, I didn't get in any trouble, but neither did they. Story 16. In high school, we had a friend who had chosen to be a little more promiscuous than others. We honestly didn't care. Besides enjoying intercourse, her personality was entirely the same. However, it's high school, so one girl in particular took it upon herself to often shame and tell this girl she was a We would all stick up for her, be the bigger person, and walk away. Except one day, this girl decided to shove through our group, knocking said friend over, causing her to hurt herself. She laughed, called her what they often call her, and spit on her. I completely lost it. I grabbed the girl by the hair as she walked away and yanked it, and then screamed at her that she's a hateful person because her mom chose illegal substances over her. Then as I walked away, I pushed the door open so hard that when she tried to follow me, it swung back and hit her. She stopped messing with my friend after that. Not my proudest moment, and I have not ever used physical violence or information that's meant to be private against another person again. Story 17. My 7th freaking trip to the DMV when trying to reinstate my license. Every single time they scrutinized my paperwork and always managed to find something wrong and would send me a way to fix it. On the 7th trip, they finally resorted to, "You have no proof that you ever had a license." Despite my piles of paperwork showing my driving record, among other things, I refused to leave the seat and said, "You people are monsters." A manager was called, we argued, he said he believed that I had a license but there was just no proof, and he couldn't risk accepting my paperwork in case someone checked it. I said I refused to leave the seat until I knew exactly what was needed. Manager said, "Tell you what, I can contact last state I lived in and could get a verification that I had a license there. It would take 3 minutes." That's when I yelled in the DMV, "Why wasn't that the first freaking thing you said?" Anyway, I got my license back. Story 18. I can remember that day like it was yesterday. I was home packing my stuff to get ready for when my husband was out of basic training. I never yell or even raise my voice to hardly anyone ever. My dad has always had a wicked temper, and my sister also had a knack for starting yelling matches with him. One night she forgot to do something she was supposed to, and the yelling started again. I ignored it up until he called her stupid. It got under my skin, so I spoke up a little saying he shouldn't call her that. He hollered back, "You are my daughters. I can talk to you however I want." That's when I snapped. I saw red for the first time in my life, and I completely lost it. I screamed back at him at how I was tired of him treating us like garbage when he lost his temper, at how we hid in the back of the room with my mom until he cooled off, and how all I wanted was to visit my family before I had to move over 12 hours away from them. I also threatened that if he ever wanted to see me again, then he needed to shut up and sit in the corner until he was done throwing a fit. I yelled at him for the first time in my life for a solid 30 minutes. I didn't stop until everything I had to say built over the years was out, and I saw him go from red-faced angry to what seemed to be guilt-ridden. When I finally stopped, he was quiet, didn't say a word, and walked away. Shortly after I moved out, he went to a doctor and has been put on some medication to help with his anger issues. Now he's super friendly, and I haven't heard him throw a tantrum like he used to in over 10 years now. He's never spoken poorly to me or my sister since then either. Wow, that's a wonderful ending to a sorry situation. Story 19. So earlier this year, my health insurance got messed up. I started making too much money to qualify for my state's Medicare, so healthcare.gov requested a notification from NJ Family Care to confirm I wasn't on it anymore. So in January, I called them to get said notification. They say, yeah, you should get it in a couple of weeks. It never comes. Unfortunately, I had forgotten about it until healthcare.gov sends me a message that they're going to raise my insurance costs if I don't get them the message in the next 2 weeks. So I called NJ Family Care again and explained to them the situation. They once again claim they're going to send me the notice and don't. So now after getting an extension from healthcare.gov about this, I call up NJ Family Care once more and attempt to explain the situation, politely requesting the cancellation notice. But the woman on the phone had an attitude with me, saying stupid things like, you know this is the cancellation department, right? And I lost my crap. What the hell is your problem? I don't understand why the heck you can't just send me the freaking letter. What's happening over there? Just look in the freaking file and cancel it. Yes, you. I know this is the cancellation department. I want a notice that it's canceled. It must have scared the crap out of her because the next thing she said was, I'll go get my supervisor, who solved the problem in 10 minutes and I got my cancellation notice 3 days later. Story 20. I grew up on a farm and one day, several cows decided that since their head could fit through a small hole in a gate, that their whole body could fit through a small hole in a gate. This resulted in a broken gate, a cow stuck in the broken gate, several cows roaming freely in a field after escaping through the broken gate, and me absolutely losing my crap. And now work in IT. Cows are dumb. Story 21. In 6th grade, a group of some 4 kids took monopoly of the back of the bus, a true power move. I always minded my own business and tried to sit away from them. For one, they all didn't understand basic hygiene and smelled even though they were older than me. Anyway, turns out the bus driver was their quiet, retired grandpa, who would never tell them to stop bullying or doing dumb stuff. So one time, they were having a spitting war, as in they spit across the seats at each other as they jumped seats for cover. At one point, I was sitting in the middle, and a giant wad of their disgusting spit hit me square in my face. I then proceeded to take my Pearson history book, one of those big, heavy, hardcore textbooks, and smashed him over the head with it. Granted, this was me telling them to stop their nonsense several times. The spitting stopped after that. Anyway, the book cover cracked and I had to pay at the end of the year, but I regret nothing. Holy crap, how do you crack one of those covers?
If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out this next video. The YouTube algorithm really thinks you like it.